Hello. Let's see. We'll just wait a couple minutes for people to chime in. Okay. So a couple things. Um, I'll just start by saying thank you for joining me this afternoon. Believe it or not, I will be getting a haircut. I get a lot of comments about my hair, but that's a side note. But uh, all joking aside about the hair, right now is an interesting time in the markets with this news coming out, as I mentioned this morning, with regards to Facebook and Google in Australia. It seems as though big tech might finally be put under more scrutiny, which is something that a lot of us have been wanting to see happen for a long time. I still happen to be shocked that in the United States, unlike Europe, we do not have laws on the books that allow us to be have the right to be forgotten. That these companies, these big tech companies, don't have to purge all of our information about ourselves. So, in a bizarre sort of way, by using their services and not paying for anything, um, they are trying to say they have a right to all this information about us. So, we at some point are going to need to uh, get involved and make sure that we have a right to be forgotten. Just like there's bankruptcy laws in this country, where if somebody makes a couple missteps and has to file bankruptcy on a personal level, you go back 7 years. After 7 years, you clean the slate. 7 years seems to be the cycle with some of that stuff, and I think we should also put something in. Um, you know, hey, look at that! Adam is watching from Australia, so it's great, Adam. Thank you. I'm glad to see that Australia is getting their act together, and hopefully the U.S. follows the lead of Australian lawmakers. So you guys should be very pleased with the news that came out today. So on that note, right now, there's some CEO. And now keep in mind, at Preactive Investments, I don't talk about specific investments. This is all for educational purposes only, because I fall under a lot of regulatory scrutiny. So I can't talk about it without a bunch of disclaimers. So I'm not here to talk about what anybody should do with their money. I'm just here to give you some insights and things that you can think about before you put your own money to work, or what you do when you talk to your advisors and such. But there's some CEO of a company. I'm not going to mention the name. It's not important. It's more of what he said that is important. And he made a comment that the crypto market and Bitcoin is going to be worth $100 trillion. And people talk about currency like it's worth like what a company is worth. And nothing could be further from the truth under a properly functioning currency. A currency is not supposed to be an asset over time. It's supposed to be a store of value and assets. And I'm going to do a Bitcoin talk. I recorded one a couple of years ago, and I need to get it approved through compliance, because it was before I was at this firm that's handling my compliance. But in this video, I walk through what makes a currency. One of the most important characteristics that provide a currency to have value is obviously the rule of law. You need to enforce the value of that currency. You ask yourself a question: how do you enforce the value of a currency? Well, for the most part, it's been a strong military. And with all these crypto markets, one of the things that people should be concerned about, it can go up 50% from here, or it can go down 50% from here. That's just the reality of how volatile it is. So as long as you know that it can fall, and then it could just keep falling indefinitely, or if it continues to rise, it can keep rising if you're short indefinitely. And nobody really knows for sure, because this could be nothing more than a giant speculative bubble of our lifetime, kind of like the tulip craze that wiped out a lot of people back in the Netherlands, I think 300 or 400 years ago. People that lived through the 99, 2000 .com bubble, we saw what happened there. I think the NASDAQ dropped almost 80%. And so that's a big deal. You should always be wary of something going up very fast on no real volume or float out there, because that's a sign that, somebody's mentioning here, if you have a limited supply of volume and there's people withholding supply, that those prices might not be a true reflection of what something is worth. I'll give you a simple example. I want you to imagine you have a house, it's paid in full, and then all of a sudden somebody wants to buy 1% of your house. And, at some price you'd be like, hey, my house is worth $500,000 or $300,000, whatever the number is. And they say, I want to buy 1% of your house. You'd be like, you're crazy. I'm not selling you 1% of my house. But then they say, you know what? I'm willing to give you not $3,000. I'm willing to give you $5,000. So now all of a sudden in your mind, you're like, wow, this house is worth $500,000. I will gladly sell it to them for $5,000 for 1% of my house. So when I go to sell my house, they get to keep 1% of it. And I get the money right now. So then all of a sudden somebody comes to you and says, I'll give you $6,000 for 1% more. And you're like, whoa, wait a second. Now my house is worth $600,000. And someone just does this with 1% increments all the way up to $1 million. Now, if all of a sudden 10 people give you 10, they give you a larger dollar amount each time. One gives you 6, one gives you 7, one gives you 8, one gives you 9,000, one gives you 10 for 1%. And they're all chasing the house. You, as the house owner, when you know it's worth $300,000 because it costs $300,000 to build a house, and you know what your area is worth, all of a sudden somebody offered you $10,000 for 1%. You might get delusional and think, wow, they must know something I don't know. So my house must be worth $1 million. And in fact, I'm going to go buy back everything that I just sold to people along the way up. I'm just using an extreme example of a house. But this happens from time to time in asset prices. If you don't pay attention to how they're cascading it up, you might be the one left holding the bag. There's a saying, the proverbial holding the bag. You don't want to be that person. And Warren Buffett has a great line that he's used in the past. If you're playing poker and you don't know who the patsy is, who's the weakest player at the table, if you can't figure that out within 5 minutes, then you're probably the weakest player at the table. You need to know who you are in relationship to the game. This CEO that came out publicly on CNBC and said that the crypto market's going to be worth $100 trillion, or Bitcoin. $100 trillion, it's just a ridiculous statement. And so the fact that he's running a publicly traded company and making such an off-the-wall statement that would get you fired and possibly get you in a lot of trouble and sued in the finance industry is unbelievable. You don't have to take my word for it. Go find me someone who's a professional money manager that is going to make that same claim that the Bitcoin is going to be worth $100 trillion. Now, if he would have said the statement, Bitcoin might have $100 trillion of economic activity trade through it, or have assets of $100 trillion valued in Bitcoin, that's a different thing. That's like saying, you know what, my house is worth $300,000, for example, the earlier example I just gave, and it's in US dollars. Doesn't mean it's worth, it's worth 300,000 US dollars, but the dollar market isn't necessarily, I guess if he's trying to say that the dollar market is worth 300,000, that's not entirely true. If you understand how currency is priced, there's a certain amount of currency in circulation. And then the value of those assets is usually a multiple of the amount of money in circulation. So, once again, he's going outside of his wheelhouse. I would never give advice to his company about how they should be doing things. I don't know anything about the inner workings of it and his workforce and his strategy. But for him to shoot his mouth off about economics as well as currencies with such a ridiculous statement is amazing to me. And so, maybe he just wanted to be outrageous so that he can get a lot of attention. I'm not sure what the cause is. But with that being said, if you're going to do anything with any type of these currencies, please keep in mind, ask yourself a simple question. What is the recourse if they just stop trading it? If they say, you know what, you have all this money in an account and they're not trading it, or it opens at zero, how would you feel? Who would you turn to? You're going to go to our government that doesn't recognize it as officially as a currency? The Federal Reserve is the only one that technically has the right to print dollars in this country. Are you going to go to China, ask them to make you whole? Where are you going to go to make sure you get your money back is my first question. Number two is, what is this thing really worth if it was truly trading in a manner similar to other currencies? So anyways, that's my big thing for today. I just want to mention that because it was a big news story. I want to just let you know that look into it some more. Assume anything I'm saying is it's educational only. Please assume that whatever I say or anybody professionally never hurts to look into it a little more yourself and get a second opinion. You shouldn't take what somebody's saying as the ultimate truth. Use it as a data point. Look at it and say, you know what, this person Bobby said this, person I don't know, Jeff over here said that, and somewhere in the middle, maybe the two of them are right, and that's what makes a market. There's always somebody buying and there's always somebody selling. So obviously, if there's someone buying and there's someone selling on all these different assets, they all have different sets of information and they have different understandings of how the world is working. So it's important that you figure out how much of the world that you understand and what you think is happening is based in sound logic and reason. Because, as Buffett will say, I'm going to use another line from him. He's got a lot of great quotes. Short term, the markets are a voting machine. People vote their money with what they think is going to happen. Long term, companies' shares are a weighing machine. It's which companies can pull out the most economic value on behalf of their shareholders over time that weigh more over time. And that's an extremely important concept, that even if things disconnect from economic reality, prices do that from time to time. You do not want to have that be something that you make your decisions off of, where you're just speculating. You need to understand what you're in. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in a few hours. Thank you.